Hey Factory family, I'm Chase Peterson and this is my wife Megan, and together we facilitate the Young Adults Discipleship Group on Tuesday nights. We're in week 8 of our study of the book of Hebrews, and today we're going to be diving into Hebrews chapter 9. We're asking him today to silence our thoughts and the noise around us so that we can listen and hear his voice through the text.
Hebrews 9 opens by describing the Old Covenant ministry and the rules and regulations for an earthly sanctuary. In Exodus 25, after giving the Israelites the 10 Commandments, the Lord speaks through Moses, instructing the Israelites to build him a tabernacle. The word tabernacle means house or dwelling place. God literally instructed the people to build him a house just so that he could dwell with his people. He wanted to be near them. Knowing that his people would fail and to follow his commands, God also knew that he was separated from them. Even the priests appointed by God to make atonement for the sins of his people after following the sacrificial laws could never truly be with God. Hebrews 9, 6-8 says, "With these things prepared like this, the priests enter the first room repeatedly, performing their ministry. But the high priest alone enters the second room, and he does that only once a year, and never without blood, which he offers for himself and for the sins of the people had committed in ignorance." The Holy Spirit was making it clear that the way into the most holy place had not yet been disclosed, while the first tabernacle was standing. Under this Old Testament, God set apart the Levitical priests as the ones to mediate for us before God in the tabernacle, and to make sacrifices for the sins of all the Israelites. Hebrews 9 says, "This is a symbol for the present time, during which gifts and sacrifices are offered that cannot perfect the worshiper's conscience." They are physical regulations and only deal with food, drink, and various washings, imposed until the time of the new order. So at the beginning of this year, I made a goal for myself. I've never read the Bible all the way through. So I set a goal to read the Bible from cover to cover in 2022. I'm walking through this Bible study. It's come to my realization that a lot of people have these thoughts about the Old Testament. The Old Testament is boring. The Old Testament is describing God's wrath too much, or things like that. And I've seen that there's a lot more positivity towards the New Testament. And that got me kind of thinking that, when I got a new car, I was really excited because it was better. It was new. And if I get a new pair of shoes, I'm really excited because they're new. And then in Hebrews 9, we're looking at the Old Covenant ministry versus the New Covenant ministry. And obviously, through what we've talked about today, the New Covenant ministry was better, it was more excellent. But then I started thinking, in order for me to have something new, I have to have something old first. We can't call something new unless we have something old. And there was a reason for the Old Testament. There was a reason for the old law. There was a reason for the Old Covenant. And God set that up from the very beginning, that he knew that the Old Covenant ministry wasn't the best. He knew it wasn't the permanent solution. He gave it to us anyway to prepare the way for the New Covenant ministry, for Jesus to come and to ultimately make that final sacrifice for us and for all people. So what's the problem? The author of Hebrews is pointing to the fact that the Old Covenant is inadequate. Because of our sin, we're separated from God. We need a priest to go before us. Levitical priests are prevented by sin and death from providing complete salvation. And Levitical priests must repeatedly offer blood sacrifices for our sin and can only enter the most holy place once per year. This would be the Day of Atonement, which you can see in Leviticus 16:29.
The old order was useless, but Hebrews 9 doesn't end there. It continues to point us to the perfection of a new covenant through Jesus Christ, who was appointed by God to become our high priest and who offered himself as perfect and complete sacrifice for all. And Jesus overcomes all of those problems mentioned in one swoop with his life. He was the perfect sanctuary, and he is the perfect sacrifice. Jesus was the one and done, 100%, the one take Drake, the once and for all. So there was no other need to have another person. There's no need to purify him as a sacrifice, for he knew no sin. And he wasn't a copy of heavenly things. He is God. So there's no need to repeatedly sacrifice year after year. like the Levitical priests did. His sacrifice was perfect, and the veil that was previously dividing the holiest of holy in the Old Covenant tabernacle was torn so that we all can come to God. So why is that important? As a beneficiary of eternal inheritance, we're no longer separated from God, and sin and death have no power over our God. Jesus is to be our intercessor forever and always because he conquered death to stand before God for us. In the case of a will, beneficiaries have no claim on the benefits assigned to them in a will until the testator, the person who has the will, died. Since Christ's death has been duly attested, the promised inheritance is available to his beneficiaries. That would be us as believers. Hebrews 9:11-14 says it like this: "But Christ has appeared as a high priest of the good things that have come. In the greater and more perfect tabernacle not made with his hands, he entered the most holy place once and for all time, not by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, having obtained eternal redemption. For this reason, Christ is our mediator, and those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance. As a beneficiary, you have no separation from God, and you can freely receive this gift of eternal salvation."
Hebrews 9:13-14 says, "For if the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a young cow sprinkling those who are defiled sanctify for the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, cleanse our conscience from dead works so that we can serve the living God?"
A lot of things stood out. I tend to bounce around on ideas, so I had a ton of different thoughts on what we wanted to teach on. I used to work in insurance, so I thought about a lot of beneficiaries and paying out death benefits. And I thought about stories in my own life about trying to make it my own way, representing the earthly tabernacle and the sanctuary of like trying to reach and attain something, maybe not salvation, but doing it your own way, when really the more excellent way that Meg shared is the only way. And really just going through the text, to me it's more of like an anthem for believers, and it really kind of spoke to me in particular because it sounds bad, but it's like the easy route, right? It's like I don't have to do it anymore, so I'm good. Like Jesus paid the way for us so that I don't have to do it. That's like awesome to me because I like the easy route in everything. If there's a way to do something different that makes it even a little easier, I'm doing it. So in Hebrews 9, that's like what really spoke to me was just go through Jesus and you're good. So
I think what stood out to me in Hebrews 9 is it made me really think of what the whole study title is all about. So the study that we're doing is called More Excellent. And if you look at the Old Covenant ministry and how the Israelites had to come to the priest and had to rely on somebody else to make their sacrifices for them. They had to go follow all of these specific rules. They had to make these perfect sacrifices just so that they could even be in the presence of God. And they thought it was working for them. And they did this for years and years and years. With the whole story was pointing to Jesus coming and being that perfect sacrifice. So they had no idea that there was something that was better out there, that was more excellent for them when Jesus came and made that sacrifice, so that they didn't have to use the priest. They could come to the Father on their own to ask for forgiveness and know that it was already paid for them. That they didn't have to make sacrifices. They didn't have to follow all these specific rules, that it was just a wide open door for them to come and ask for forgiveness on their own.